Hi, welcome. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications. And today we are interviewing the assistant principals and pupil accounting administrative assistant and attendance secretary at WBMS from West Bloomfield School District named Miss Antoinette Morton. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Max. How are you?
I'm doing great. What is your schedule like when at work?
Uh, Usually it's like I get to work about 7:15 and right away there's always phones are ringing. Mrs. Selesky is doing the subs and just trying to get everything organized for the start of the day. Parents are calling usually about either their kid not coming into school or they're going to be late or just trying to if something's going on, they want to know like what activities going on that evening. And so basically, that's the start of my day is dealing with parents. And then once the doors open at 7:45, the students come in and sometimes they were like, oh, we need an ID or a lanyard. So, or can you sign a bus note? So yeah,
When did you
always,
when
always
did you
busy.
start work? When did you start working at WBMS?
So I started working when it was Abbott, and that was in, oh my gosh, 2000. So this is going to be my 14th year coming up. So 2009. So yeah.
What month exactly? Do you know?
Oh, I started in like September or
Oh,
it was actually August of that 2009 time
oh.
frame. I think, let me see, 13, 12, 11, 10,
You joined
9,
in my
8.
birth year. What was it like to apply to be an office staff?
Okay, so when I first got hired in, Mrs. Hughes was the principal, and um, they just hired a new assistant principal who was my daughter's friend's mom. And so the girls were playing, and um, she mentioned, "Oh yeah, Abbott's going to be looking for a new, office person." I'm like, "Oh, maybe I should apply." So I was working at Ely that no longer is around, and so when I, she's like, "Yeah," she goes, "Hold on." So Mrs. Newman picked up the phone, called Mrs. Hughes, and basically Mrs. Hughes was like, "Is she good?" Mrs. Newman was like, "Yeah, I think she'll be great." Okay, she's hired. That's how I got hired in at Abbott.
So was there an interview process?
No, not really. It was just like got the job. So yeah. So and now almost 14 years later, still in the middle school and working in the office.
Have you done summer school other than this year and last year?
I did it the year before that, so 2 years ago, and I actually worked at Doherty with the young elementary kids, which was quite different from middle school. It was more of, a different type of group of kids to work with. So
What's your favorite kind of group of students to work with?
I do love you guys, the middle schoolers. I really do. It's it's unique to see how you guys come in as these sixth graders, all like timid, shy, not sure what to expect. And then as you guys, you know, go on to the high school, the majority of you guys have like matured into these young budding adults. And it's just amazing to see some of you guys just develop into these great humans. You were always great humans, but it's like great to see you guys grow into these that we know that you guys are going to make a difference.
What inspired you to work in education?
Well, my husband was a teacher and he's retired, but I thought, you know what? I'm always helping out in the classroom. I was the school mom for the classroom for my two children. And I decided that, well, since I'm working and, helping out in the classroom, why not try to get a job? And it was great. I had the days off that the kids had off, summer vacations, winter vacations, spring break. So, which I didn't have to worry about finding daycare about. So it was a win-win for both of us.
What's the easiest thing about your job?
I would consider myself a computer geek. And I say that with affection and love because I always wanting to learn more about computers and the programs that I'm working with. So if there's a problem, I'm going to try to solve it the best I can. And I really do like that. But the best part of my job, I would say, is most of the time is interacting with the students. Is because it's just, sometimes that student just needs someone to listen to, or, just sometimes, they get upset and they need someone just to be there to be with them. So it's, there's always a lot of good, and sometimes with that some bad, but the good always outweighs the bad, I feel.
What's the hardest thing about your job?
Sometimes the hardest part of my job is if, like, when parents call and they're calling to let me know that they're picking up their child because either, there's a family member that has become really ill and possibly will not make it. And it's hard just when I see the student come in not to be like overly emotional with them and give them a hug, because I don't want me to interfere what the parent is going to say to them and how they're going to tell them, because normally I'm the type of person that, like, someone says this is going on, I want to hug that person to make sure that they're okay. So sometimes I have to like step back from that, not to interfere with that part.
What is your favorite thing about your job?
My favorite thing about my job is working with the people I work with and the kids that's around. Um, I've always said that working with Abbott, then we went to the West Bloomfield Middle School. It was There's always that family feel that, even though Mrs. Hughes is going and retiring, I know I can call her up and say, hey, you never guess what this happened, or a funny story, or talk about the kids, or just, just see how she's doing and send the birthday greetings or stuff like that. So, you know, is friendships that we have made. I think that's one of my favorite part of working at the middle school is the friendships that I made.
What is your least favorite thing about your job?
My least favorite, sometimes I really hate filing. Because it is so tedious and time consuming. But that's probably my least favorite part of the job is the filing part. Because sometimes it's when you're so busy in the office, you really can't get back to the filing of where the filing room is. So sometimes it stacks up and you're like, oh my God, I have all this to do now.
How
So
often do you have to
yeah.
file?
Oh, it should be done at least bi-week, twice a month. Um, but sometimes it's like, oh, this is hasn't been done in like 3 or 4 months. I should do this now.
You're always busy when I'm down there.
So I know sometimes it's hard, just like to do anything. It's like I'm like I got 3 screens up, and it's like each screen has a different thing going on, and I'm trying to multitask sometimes.
Does it overwhelm you sometimes?
Sometimes it does, but the majority I just like, okay, prioritize what has to go in what order. What should I work on first? What can wait to the last? And that's how I do it. So
What's the most stressful part about your job?
I have been doing, when I first started, I was, being a pupil accounting, I'm in charge of doing the account for the school for twice a year that gets submitted to the schools, to the state. And when I first started doing that job, I was like so nervous and so stressed out about how, if I made a mistake, is it going to cost the district hundreds of thousands of dollars? Um, that was like when I first started the first couple years. Now I'm like going, count, done, no problem. So I learned how to deal like It's like count, I could do it with my eyes closed. Um, Things that stress me out now, I think with the school being so big, almost 1,000 students, I think just making sure I have everything correct in the system and ready to go to make sure that is the right way. So just making sure all the data that we have for every student is correct.
How do you deal with
And
your
that is
stress?
tedious. And um, I come home from work sometimes and I just veg out, put the headphones on, listen to some music, or I, pick up a good book to read. So yeah, and sometimes escaping through either reading or music. Or I go and visit, my daughter in Ann Arbor.
How many books have you read this year? And what's your goal?
Oh my gosh. Let's see. Let's see, three. Let's, I think I'm close to like I want to say like almost 30 books I have read. So, yeah. My goal is I try to read at least 3 to 4 books a month. Um and I just picked one up that my niece just got done reading. She's like, "Got to read it, Aunt Nettie." And so I'm reading that one right now. I read one that was very interesting. It was called Marie Antoinette Serial Killer, and it deals with how Marie Antoinette, um, during the Revolution, the French Revolution, and so it takes place modern time, but it, it has facts from that time period. And I'm such a huge history buff, and I love like historical fictions and stuff like that. So if I'm reading something that deals with historical facts, I will stop reading and actually have to investigate to make sure the timeline and what they're talking about is actually what happened.
What is your advice on how to deal with stress?
Um, you can be stressed out, but don't let it get to you where it's going to consume you. Um, because stress is going to be in your life no matter what. Just don't let it consume you. Just get past it. Sometimes you do some deep breathing if you need to, or just have a mantra of like, this shall pass. If not, I will beat it. you know. So but yeah, it's just learning to deal with it. It's just like I say to people, it's like you have a right to be upset, just like you have a right to feel stressed about something. It's normal, natural human nature. And but it's like don't let it consume you.
What is it like to be an office staff?
Um, because I worked previously at a company many years ago. And it was a totally different atmosphere as in that office staff as it is now. So each office has a different dynamic. Um, so it's like, if I was working in a different way or a different area, in a different type of office area, it would be a different feel or a different um a different dynamic of how it would be run. Because a lot of times some offices are, have one person in charge and then they have the secretaries or the administrative assistants or clerks working for them. So it's like in that sense of a way, it does change how things, with Mrs. Selesky, she's in charge of certain groups. I'm in charge of certain things, and Miss Page is in charge of, doing the discipline. And, so everybody has their different job roles. But in some other office staff, it's like everybody does everything. And sometimes that could be like um, stepping on each other's toes because somebody's like, well, that's my job, I'm doing this, but with us is, we're assigned certain type of roles of what we're to do in the office. So
Who else is doing summer school with you?
Miss Hawking is teaching Spanish at the high school with me, and Mr. Keikos, he's doing math.
Anyone
But
else at the high school or elementary that's doing it?
I'm not sure who's doing, if there's anybody doing elementary, but and then I do know that Miss Wynn, I think, is running some type of program for a few weeks in July. So, but it's just for I believe rising sixth graders. So, but that's all I know so far.
What are
So,
your roles as an office staff?
so answer the phones, and then we have to buzz people into the building and into the office, and then buzz them out of the office. And then doing the attendance every day. I do what's called data cleanup. So, with 950 students, you have to go through, and sometimes stuff happens in the students' data files that are in Power School. Sometimes something happens and you have to go through and clean that up, at least once a month to run through that. So with 950 students, I try to do that, weekly, of like grabbing a handful of students at a time and just running data on them to make sure everything's okay. So like if a student's family has are leasing a house or an apartment and their is up, I have to contact that parent and let them know that, hey, I noticed that your lease is going to be up within the next few months or so, like that. Just a reminder, I will need the new lease agreement. Please send it to me. And then I have to go through and make sure everything in that sense is updated and kept up. So, yeah.
What are some
And
of the trainings you have to be an office staff?
so I see Power School came out 12 years ago. And so when Power School came out, I went for it was a 4-day training, and I learned how to do, at the time we were responsible for creating our own report cards, writing that report, doing our GPA and all that. So each school actually had several different reports that nothing matched. But it was like they gave us a whole bunch of training on how to do all that. And over the years, Power School has evolved where it's more, everything is more a consistency of matching. So whatever we try to mimic what's at the high school for our grades, especially for middle school. Elementary, not, they don't really have to do that much because their grades aren't really as, I don't want to say important, but as precise as how middle school and high school are. Because at the elementary building, you get 3, 2, and 1s. And at the middle school and high school level, you get A's through F's. And each letter grade is equal to a point number of, an A is a 4, B is a 3, C is a 2, D is a 1, and 0 is F. So everything that way. So when they get to high school level, they do the GPAs, and that's everything on that level has to be correct, precise. So as we trickle down to the middle school, we still give the A's and the point value, but we don't do GPAs yet, which I'm not sure we will, because it doesn't really provide anything unless they're taking high school credit. So if you're taking an algebra 1, a Spanish 1, or an honors geometry class as a middle schooler, you'll get those points added into your GPA at the high school.
In the intro, I said you're the pupil accountant. What do you have to do for that?
Well, with being the pupil accounting, I am responsible to make sure that their FTE is correct in the system, which the state, that's how the state funds us. So if we have 960 students, I better have 960 FTEs so the state can fund us that money. So I have to make sure all that is correct. And also is like if we have students that are out of district, I have to make sure they're coded with their home district the right way. So that way we get their FTE money. And if we have like employees' children, there's a different way to calculate that. So, and everything's broken down by, you know, school of choice, employee, child, resident, and then everything is broken down by if students a special ed student or a general ed student. And I have to go through that and to make sure everybody's on the correct caseload and they have the correct, if they're special ed, the correct service program that they're supposed to be in. So there's a lot of like little key figures that you have to go into to make sure that is correct.
Who is your favorite person to work with?
I love working with Mrs. Graff because sometimes her humor can be so infectious and sometimes so needed. And, you know, every time I see something like Star Wars, because she's such a huge Star Wars fan, I have to get her it. And she's, you know, I do love working with her. I'm like, it's like I've worked with her for, oh my God, let's see, 8 years. Yeah, going on 8 years. So yeah. So, and then I love, you know, it's like I am going to miss Mrs. McDowell. I, Mrs. McDowell, there was something about Mrs. McDowell that just, you couldn't help but just be happy around her. She had that, you know, always like, it's going to be a great day and I'm going to make it a great day.
The energy.
The energy, yes. Yeah, she had that and has that energy and she goes so lucky to have her. So,
I'll have to make sure to visit both places, the
yes,
middle
you
school
will.
and Chico.
Yeah.
But yeah, Miss Graff's office, I feel like is the most decorated room in the building out
I,
of
I
every room.
I know. I think there definitely we should have like a contest of like, you know, who has the best decorations or, you know, definitely there should be like a contest. Mrs. Gruff will win hands down though.
Yes. And then maybe I could do like a video thing of here's a review of this contest.
Yes, exactly. There you go.
I already have so many edits I have to do for the summer. I'm s- I'm still waiting on people for the welcome video for David Gardner, and I'm working on a car show thing.
Oh, what kind of car show thing are you
For
working
the
on?
robotics car show, just
Oh,
like a scratch animation of like cars going into the parking lot.
okay. Is that with Mr. Mylar from the high school?
Yep.
Mr. Mylar is awesome.
How did you pick being an office staff rather than a teacher or any other role?
Um, it kind of picked me. Um, so when I got hired in at Abbott with Mrs. Hughes, I was hired in as a general office para, and literally, one of the secretaries decided to go onto a different job, and Mrs. Hughes usually said, "The job's yours if you want it," and I said, "Okay." So it picked me. So that's the story, and I'm sticking to it.
What are you working on currently?
Um, Trying to finish the scheduling for the middle school. I'm like, there's some quirks going on in it, so I trying to figure out the bugs of that one. I'm like, because we have to everything has to be done by Friday, so I'm working
Ooh,
on that, and
that'll be a
then
late night later.
I actually have gone through some of the stuff, and I'm hoping to get I put a question into there's a Power School forum, and I trying to see if they can help me with the question. I think I know the answer, but I just want to make sure I'm not going to screw something up. And then I'm doing summer school at the high school. I'm working with Mr. Avery. He's up there also. He's the dean of students, Mr. Avery is.
He's now the dean of students at the middle school.
No, he's the dean of
Oh,
students for the high school program.
they
So
still have to pick who it will be for the middle school.
we still haven't decided who that's going to be yet. So I know interviews are to come. So
What are your hobbies?
I like to read. I I have attempted to write a book. So
Ooh,
I'm like
about
170
what?
page murder mystery.
Ooh,
And yep. And then doing that, you know,
you can do it.
I do love watching sports. Never could play it, but I do love watching sports. Baseball, football, and college football are my favorite. So yeah,
You can do it. You can write that book.
I can.
I'm
I,
sure Miss Hannah Kim would love to help you with it.
I know she has offered actually. So yeah. I don't know if my book would fall under children's lit though. Probably not.
Does it have to? Writing a book's an accomplishment.
Yes, it is accomplishment. Yes.
What is your career history and roles?
Well, so for let's see, for the last 15, going on 16 years, I have worked with West Bloomfield School Districts. Before that, I was a stay-home mom for, oh boy, let's see, Leah was 6, David was 10, for like 10 years. Before that, before I had my children, I was in a very serious car accident. So I was home with multiple surgeries that I had. So that took but before that, I did office work doing data entry and management. So yeah.
What is your education?
So I have a degree in computer science and
Hmm.
programming, and that was from, oh my gosh, it's like it would be more like a you know how they have the tech schools now, like
Yeah.
it would be from one of those type of schools, and that was back in 1990, way before the 21st century.
It's all right. You're young. You're young.
So yeah, so it was like it was at that time in about the 90, like 89, 90, that the tech schools started coming out with like computer programming, computer um technology, internet, trying to get all that. And I was more into like, okay, I want to learn everything I can about the programming, data processing, and you know, I thought, oh, okay, that'd be really cool. And I just at that point in time, I'm like, I loved it. And I actually took when I was in high school, we had a computer programming class, and it was with DOS, DOS. You can look it up later. And I was one of like three girls in a class of 20 boys that took this computer class. And they were like, usually like, why are you taking this? This is a guide job. So I'm like, because at that point, like computers, engineering was all geared towards more a male field. So, but it has changed around.
And what's your favorite part of the school?
Oh, my favorite part of the school. I love the eye center. I do. I think it's incredible. And the out and how it has the two outside learning centers. So yeah,
Any room is fun. It's the people that fill the room that make it even more fun.
that is correct, Max.
It's the personalities in the room.
Yep, it is.
I would like to thank you for joining. I've had a lot of fun and a lot of laughs.
Thank you, Max. And I had
You're
enjoyed
welcome.
this too. All right, Max, you have a
All
great
right.
summer, and I know we'll be in contact.